Welcome to the Tuesday Huddle, a brief reflection on Sunday's message at Walnut Hill Church in Lexington, Kentucky. Each week, we revisit the heart of the sermon and consider how God's Word meets us in the days ahead. Thanks for listening. Let's continue the conversation.
Well, good morning and happy Monday to you, and welcome to Walnut Hill. My name is Sean Barkley. I'm the pastor at a place called Walnut Hill Church, just outside of Lexington, Kentucky, surrounded by beautiful horse farms, and I work with someone named Jessie, and she is seated across the table from me, and I say good morning to you.
Good morning.
What's happening?
Not too much. It's the first day of Walnut Hill Day School Camp.
It's also the first day of June.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, in fact, when I was downstairs walking over from the sanctuary building, I heard one of the teachers telling one of the children who was crying to breathe.
Oh.
Breathe.
It's funny. By the second or third day, though, they're good.
Yeah, this is the one to go.
They're good to go. Yeah.
I get that. So anyway, welcome. Glad that you can join us for about 20, 25 minutes as we unpack Jonah chapter 1. If you've got a Bible handy, that will be helpful. If you have not yet worshiped with us from yesterday, which was the last day of May, obviously, you can go to our church website or our church Facebook page and join us. And we're ready to dive right into Jonah. First of all, do you have a lot of experience reading Jonah, or is this kind of a newer thing for you?
I don't, what I think of when I think of Jonah, and you brought this up in the sermon, is the whale.
Yeah, let's talk about the whale.
Yeah, it's always the whale. So I think that's, what we think. And when I think back to it before I read this book again, you kind of think, I don't even know how he got into the whale. I don't know why he was spit out of the whale. So it's fun to actually read the chapter now and realize there's so much more to it. But man, he's kind of ornery.
He's cantankerous. I like him.
Yeah, he is.
I just think he's so easy to identify with. I mean, God's asking him to do something.
I don't know. Is he though? Because I feel like if God spoke to me directly and I knew it was the voice of God, I don't know if I'd be turning the other way.
Well,
but
or no Jonah.
Describe the circumstances to us again, though, because it's a big ask.
It is a big ask. Because, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, which is chapter 1, verse 1, and it says, go at once. So that's what he hears, to the city of Nineveh. And we mentioned yesterday, it was just sort of a deplorable place. They were known for their barbarism. They were torturous. They were violent. They had their designs on being the world's superpower. And so they were just in conquering mode and very aggressive. And Jonah represented really a group of people who had not yet been conquered. So he was in the southern kingdom, which is Judah, and in the northern kingdom, Israel. The Assyrians had already conquered that. This is about 750 BC. And so Jonah is being asked by God to go to a place that was the mortal enemy of the Hebrew people, that had just conquered their fellow Hebrews in the northern kingdom, and to preach against what they're doing and try to get them to repent and turn to God. And you can imagine, I mentioned yesterday that there are scholars and historians who say that when the Assyrians would surround a village of a nation state, the people would take their own lives en masse rather than face the brutality of the Assyrian people. So that was the reputation. So they're the opponent, the adversary, or the enemy of the Hebrew people. And now he's got to go there and tell them to quit.
Right.
That's a big ask.
And kind of wag a finger at them at the same time. I think that's the part I would go, oh, can we not do that?
Yeah, that's what I said yesterday. I was like, I would say, God, are you sure? Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah. And I don't want to go too far into the second chapter or the third, but eventually he does say something. And again, I think that would be quite controversial.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be one of the miracles.
It will.
The response to that.
Yeah.
So we think about the whale as being the miracle of the book of Jonah. And what I wanted to do yesterday was de-emphasize the whale, because I think for a lot of us, it just creates confusion and doubt. Did it happen? Didn't it happen? How did it happen? What about the stomach acids and all this kind of thing? And I had people asking me, like, now, how did he live in the belly of this fish? I'm like, I don't know. It was 3,000 years ago. And so there are some who would look at this and say, hey, this is just a story that is used to illustrate a spiritual truth. There are others who would say, no, this is a powerful story that is historically accurate, that illustrates the power of God as spiritual truth. And I just don't want to go down that road because I've got other things I want to talk about.
Yep,
When it comes to
absolutely.
Jonah.
So I want to go back to the Assyrians again. So this group that he's asking Jonah to minister to, it's kind of abnormal in numerous senses. That's because the violence and the brutality you described were conquering civilization, but also they're quote unquote Gentiles. They're not Jewish people, they're not in the Hebrew nation. So what would Jonah be thinking in regards to that? Because we don't see a whole lot of it in the Old Testament. We see some, but
God began to reveal to the prophets eventually that Israel will be a light to the nations, that the nations would turn to God because they see God in the lifestyle and obedience and goodness of the Hebrew people. And so God has this idea that He's planted the seed that 750 years before the birth of Jesus, when there's been all this conquering, I mean, they've been enslaved down in Egypt and all this kind of thing. It was really, they were in survival mode. They weren't thinking about, hey, we're going to expand the kingdom. They're thinking about, we got to protect who we are here. So, yeah. So it was a new idea. But of course, now to our ears, because we know the New Testament, we see clearly that this was the will of God from the very beginning.
it was the plan, right? But even when Jesus was here, it was shocking that he wanted those two groups to mingle.
Well, and really, if you look at the life of the early church, the instruction was to go to the Hebrews first and then to the Gentiles. There was still kind of a pecking order. And even in the early church, there was a lot of rivalry between the Gentiles and the Hebrew believers. And so it's just been a thing. You know, we human beings, we just have a way of really dividing ourselves.
We like to
Separating us.
yeah, put people into groups.
We do, don't we?
I think that's kind of the way the brain works. It categorizes and
Yeah.
tries to make sense of things, but not helpful in the end.
See, I think about stereotypes and I think they're funny, but I know that they can also be hurtful.
Oh, so yeah, really hurtful.
Yeah, I love the stereotype about myself, but yeah.
Oh, and speaking of, I'm going to bring up a stereotype. I know this is dangerous. It's kind of a stereotype. When you opened the sermon, you were talking about people who have polio. And so I looked up the most common chronic diseases of childhood, or because you mentioned that polio has only had 7 cases. So do you know what the number one is?
No. I couldn't even tell you what a chronic disease is. Really.
Okay, so it's going to shock you because it sounds so mundane. Dental decay. Yes, and children, 5 times more children have this than asthma. And it affects, their quality of life. Eventually, it can affect cardiovascular, but it's just really interesting. And where the stereotype comes in is I was reading an article about it that was published in 23, and I have to say I glanced over it. So please don't come for these people and, or me if I didn't read it in full. But it basically looked at the education of mothers and their employment and how it related to dental decay. And I was like, well, why are we only looking at the moms? Which is a bit of a stereotype.
Yeah, there were several people, well, several, there were two who came to me after worship, one who had polio.
Really?
Yes. In our congregation. He caught it in 1953. His
Wow.
dad was in the military and they were abroad. Caught it. And then another whose sister had it. And so I guess they still have it.
Mhm.
But what I was trying to say was in the 2000s,
Yeah.
I just didn't know of anyone who had contracted this and I would go visit in the hospital. I just didn't think it was a thing any longer.
Right, no, and that's what I thought when you said polio, I was like, "Why are they working with polio?"
It's one of the focuses of Rotary
It
International.
yeah, and it's still out there even though we have this idea that we've kind of conquered it.
So tell me as you were listening to the sermon, what were some of the thoughts that you had or questions? And let's just kind of work through those.
One of the concepts you brought up is that Jonah is, in fact, running away from God,
Yeah.
and it's always usually a big no-no.
Flee from the presence of the Lord.
I mean, that's bold. But, of course, you said you can think of times when you've personally done that. So, what's an example?
You know, they're personal.
Okay, well,
But
can you describe it without describing it?
I have things in my life, certain just habits that I have that I know are not good for me or healthy for me, whether it be physically, emotionally, spiritually, in particular, spiritually. And I just tolerate those. even though I know this is not good.
Yeah.
I mean, an easy one is I have often had trouble controlling my speech. I've got a quick wit and a quick tongue, and I did a little stand-up comedy, and when you do stand-up comedy, you gotta fly off of the people who are around you, and you can't be prepared, and there are many times when I say things that I just shouldn't say. I know this about myself. I know I could control it better, but it just feels good.
Oh,
It just
no.
feels
Well,
good that
I like that you admit it, that yeah, it's kind of
well, it's sort of the elephant in the room. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
but then have you seen it come back and,
Mhm.
bite you?
Well, I've seen it hurt other people. And I have certain things in my mind. I bet the people who are listening to this do too. I have certain memories of things people have said
Yeah.
that were kind of hurtful, made me uncomfortable, just I just didn't like. And when I think about those things, I wonder how many things have I said? Someone out there in this world right now, so that guy's a minister, and you wouldn't believe what he said.
But there is that quote about being held to such a high standard as a minister if you lead even one of my sheep astray, so that's gotta be difficult as a minister.
Well, you think about it, and the older you get, the more seriously you take it.
Yeah.
But I do think what he's doing is he's fleeing from God's presence because God has said, "Here's the life I want you to live." And I tried to make that leap that many of us flee from God's presence because God has said, "Here's the life I want you to live. I've given you this manual called the Bible that kind of gives you my will and my design for humanity and human interaction." And sometimes we say, I don't want that. I want to do it my way. I want to do my own thing. And so that was the leap I tried to make. And then, of course, we quoted Psalm 139, where David basically is saying, "There's nowhere I can go that you're not there, oh God." And that was designed to comfort the people rather than to trouble them. And it's good to know there's nowhere in the deepest, darkest prison, there is the Spirit of God that's going to be there with you. And so that was the idea. So he's running from God because he's scared. He doesn't want to go do that. And I don't blame him. So,
Yeah.
so I heard moving off. That's the first three verses. What else you have?
So, let's see,
I feel like I'm interviewing you.
no, that's okay. I have a list of notes as
Did you
usual.
note the little tidbit about page?
Yes, I wrote that down. I think it's really interesting.
That's included. And so again, what I made a real leap is that, you know, when we run from God and do things our way, sometimes there's a price we pay. And now I don't think that's exactly what the text is saying, but you kind of pull things out. And God sends a great wind. And again, it's supernatural. It reminded me of Pentecost.
Yes.
These mariners were experienced. They had seen it all. And they're like, this is supernatural. This is not something that we've seen. And it's so fierce that they throw the cargo overboard. Did you ever watch The Love Boat?
No, when you brought that up, I was like, I have no idea. I know of it, but I never watched it.
I'm dating myself. Because there were several of the congregation, like some of our younger people, just shaking their heads like, "No, I've never seen The Love Boat."
Yeah, 'cause
What I was trying to say was, they kind on a pleasure cruise. It's not like a Viking cruise
right.
where you're going down the Danube, seeing
Yeah.
Budapest and all these beautiful places. This is the cargo is their livelihood. So what Jonah is doing is he's sharing with us the seriousness of this storm.
Mhm.
That this is something completely different. And then, of course, they all do what we do when we get into trouble. We cry out to God.
Yes, but I love this, and tell me if I'm interpreting it incorrectly. They try their God
They do.
with the lowercase g, as you said.
And see, there were local gods, mythical goddesses, and you know, the river had a god, the mountains had a god, the birds had.
Right.
So yeah, they're appealing to something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I'm envisioning Poseidon, even though I don't know if they're Greek or Roman. But then when it doesn't work, they first of all wake Jonah up. How is he sleeping in this storm?
Again, one of the things that when we talked about yesterday, when we kind of zoomed away, is he's oblivious to the suffering he's causing other
Yeah.
people. And so I think it's powerful to the message that he's just not even, he doesn't care.
Right. So they kind of wake him up and say, "Hey, you try your God." Right? Like you try yours. Ours didn't work.
Do you have any experience with I quoted a theologian who talked about the generic God,
Mhm.
that, just culturally there are generic gods, the sports gods, the football gods. I mean, they talk about that. The golf gods are smiling down today. got a good bounce on that shot. The big guy, the man upstairs, Mother Earth, and I can go on and on and on. But I wondered if that connected with folks like, do I have sort of a secular little g God that I think has some kind of power or some kind of sway? You know, you're gambling, and oh dear God, I need to,
Right.
I don't know.
I think karma is brought up a lot. The karmic God maybe is something that's discussed.
Actually, I mean, when it comes to karma, take a little bit of a left turn. The New Testament does say you reap what you sow. I mean, that's very
Yes.
clear in that.
Mhm.
But we also see that ultimately that we get more than we deserve.
Yes. Yeah,
I mean,
at times.
sometimes people say, now, why do bad things happen to good people? And I typically turn that around and say, why do good things happen to bad people? I mean, because we have this condition known as sin that we all live in, and it manifests itself in these little things that we do that are called sins. Why does God allow us and give us grace? Why do we get mercy from God?
And I think you mentioned that in a recent sermon, the concept of people say, "Why me?" And the other side of that is, "Why not me?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So that's what's going on. They wake him up. So he's oblivious to the suffering that he's causing. And then he identifies himself. Of course, they're like, now, who are you? Where are you from? What
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
do?
Now they're very interested in what this guy's story is.
It's like they're interviewing him. Who are your people? And he says, I'm in Hebrew. And I wanted to point out, I think it's important to understand the word Lord in the Old Testament. There are multiple Hebrew words that are translated Lord,
Mhm.
just like there are multiple Greek words that are translated love. And two of the primary ones are Elohim and Jehovah. Elohim means creator, and Jehovah means covenant partner. And so when we hear Jonah describing who the Lord is, those are the two elements of who God is that he wants to point out. He's a creator of all this. So he's in charge of this wind, he's in charge of this water, he's in charge of the waves. And he's also a covenant partner. In other words, he has not just created the world and just sort of stepped back. He's engaged his people. I'm your God. You worship me, I'll take care of you. There's a covenant there.
Mhm.
And so the people, the mariners are terrified, and he's basically telling them, about this God.
Right.
And of course, then
They try it out.
they give it a shot
Yeah.
eventually. But there are no atheists in foxhole.
That's right. I love that quote. It's so true.
So they're desperate.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that eventually they say, you know what? Or he says to them, hey, just throw me overboard. But before they do that, they have compassion.
I love
Yeah.
that.
They're like, let us try harder.
Right.
And so, but again, that demonstrates the futility of working against God. So Jonah is working against God. We see the futility of that in the story. He wants to die and he gets swallowed by a fish. And boom, next thing you know, he's at Nineveh. And the same with these guys. They're going to try to do it themselves.
Yeah. It is funny though, because I just see these mariners as kind of like a merry band of pirates. And they're just doing their best and trying to make it work. And so
The eye patch and the peg leg.
exactly. And the parrot. But when a guy looks at them and says, just throw me over, they must think he's lost his mind.
Why did he jump?
Exactly. Why didn't he?
Tell me.
Well, if you
You've read the story. I've read the story.
yeah, and if we keep reading it in the sense of when you disobey God, the things that befall you and others afterwards, I kind of do see this as he's forcing these people to do something they don't want to do. They feel like they have innocent blood on their hands. They feel really badly. And again, it's all because of Jonah's choice. So,
And then, of course, they finally comply and they throw him overboard. And then they see that the ocean is immediately calm. Everything's okay. And they are converted.
yes,
That's
on
all
the
they
spot.
needed to see.
Yeah.
They saw the power of this God, and especially in comparison to the power of their gods, because we had them crying out to their gods. It gets worse, more tempestuous. Cry out to the Lord, throw Jonah overboard, and boom.
I think an instantaneous calm sea would do it for me too.
It would be too.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty huge change.
And that's really, that's a thing in the Bible. Jesus, remember, he calms the sea in the New Testament. On the Sea of Galilee, there's this great wind. We don't read that the wind is supernatural. It's just a bad storm. But they're afraid. They're afraid to the point where
Right.
and Jesus, guess what he's doing? Sleeping.
Yes. Yeah, he is. Yeah, before he
Wake him
yep.
up, calms the sea. The power of God again. Now they're believers. They offered sacrifice. So Jonah's disobedience has led to God's intervention and their salvation.
So is it meant to be after all? Was Jonah's disobedience for a reason?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was, you know, boy, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
Because again, one of the things we looked at in the story, if everybody's got their Bible, we see that God provides the fish. But we also see in verse 3 that God does not provide the ship.
True. Very true.
God does not provide the means of rebellion.
Mhm.
He provides the means of rescue. And so I never want to blame God for my rebellion. But was there foreknowledge that this was going to happen? I believe absolutely.
Or did he make the story have a point and worth in the midst of the rebellion? Yeah.
Very much so. I mean, what a powerful message. I mean, for us, we think, gosh, there's the things that I do and I have done, I just want to put aside and ignore and forget. And sometimes God can use those things to stir faith in other people. I mean, that's what we call testimony in Christian language. I've seen prison ministries and people go back to the prison who have been incarcerated there and share, hey, here's what I did and here's what God has done for me now. He didn't provide the means for me to rebel, but God certainly rescued me. He provided the fish. And so I didn't ask this because I'm going to ask it this coming Sunday, but who or what would be the fish in your life? What are the means that God has provided for your rescue? And so that's where we're going to go on Sunday.
Yeah, and even maybe where it didn't look like it was a rescue, because I'm sure when Jonah was swallowed by this whale, he wasn't thinking, "Oh, great, this is going to be good."
So I mean, I guess there was plenty to eat in the fish.
Yes,
You know what I'm doing? I didn't want to do.
yeah, we're going down the whale road.
But anyway, so that's chapter 1 of the book of Jonah.
Yeah.
And so this coming Sunday, chapter 2 is a long prayer. And so I probably will just allude to that and then dive right into chapter 3, which is the conversion of Nineveh, which I think is the greatest miracle.
It's going to get interesting.
It gets pretty interesting.
I mean, it gets more interesting than being swallowed by a whale. What better can you say about?
This is what the story says. Okay, let's move on. So, anything else for our friends?
No, I'm looking forward to the next chapter.
Well, I am too. I'm going to start working on it this afternoon.
Good.
So, anyway, well, thank you for your questions. That was really helpful. And hopefully, everyone has a wonderful week. Look forward to next Sunday. If you want to watch us online live, you can. At Walnutville Church, and we'll go to our Facebook page. But anyway, you have a wonderful week. You take good care, and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Tuesday Huddle. If Sunday's message encouraged you, we invite you to watch the full service or explore more at walnuthillchurchky.org. Join us this week and next Sunday as we continue to grow together in faith.